Hello, my loves. Welcome into this Aries New Moon Act 2 Solar Eclipse reading introduction. If you are new to my readings, hello and welcome in. If you are not new, hello and welcome back. You can support me by sharing this, commenting on this. You can look up at my services at devotedandvulnerable.com/services. Link is in the description, and you can also donate financially at paypal.me/devotedvulnerable if you feel inspired. So let's get into it. We have so much to talk about here. This new moon energy is so big, so powerful, and we're going to break it down into little pieces for you so you can really understand what it is that we're going to be doing in these readings and what the energy of this moment in time is really offering us. So new moons always are about new beginnings. It's when the sun and the moon are what's called conjunct, meaning in the same place in the sky at the same time. So this is what a new moon is. New moons offer us, like I said, the beginning energy, a new beginning, a new start, a fresh energy. Now, this newness is always offered to us in the sign that the new moon is occurring in. Currently, the new moon will be happening in the sign of Aries. So Aries energy is all about enthusiasm. It's all about generosity, courageousness, sparky, that like spark of new life. And it's very independent. It's the first sign of the astrological story, and it bursts forth headfirst into life. So that's the energy of this new beginning. It's a very emphasized new beginning because it's also the first sign of the zodiac. Now, compounding on top of this is that this is a solar eclipse. So solar eclipses, we have two eclipse seasons every year. And the solar eclipse is all about amplifying the energy of the moon. It's all about allowing this newness to be expanded. Most moon phases last for 28 days till the next moon cycle. Eclipse moon phases last for 6 months. So we're going to be feeling the energy of this new moon for the next 6 months. Not only that, but on top of all of this, this is the second new moon in Aries that we've had this year, this season. We had the new moon in Aries, which I called Act 1, 28 days ago. It was, I forget what day it was, I'm sorry. But it was at like 0 degrees of the sign. And now we're having a second new moon at 29 degrees, 50 minutes of the sign. So we are talking about a very rare occurrence in this double moon energy. It's punctuated, it's emphasized, it's even more intriguing and interesting and powerful for us to be tapping into at this time. Now, if you want to learn more about the astrology of this moment in general, of what's going on, there are some big things in play this year. I recommend Pam Gregory. She's amazing. She has awesome content. It is a deep dive, so if you're not familiar with astrology, it might go over your head a bit. But if you are interested in astrology and you really want to learn more, I'm going to reference her here. The video should be popping up on YouTube once I've had time to edit it in. Now, the new moon is happening, like I said, 29 degrees, 50 minutes of Aries. So a few minutes after this moon happens, the moon is going to shift into Taurus. A few hours after this happens, the sun is going to shift into Taurus. So we have this like last moment energy of this new start, new beginning here. I am going to be doing the Taurus solar season readings. So if you want to learn about where Taurus is in your chart, what the Taurus energy is as we spotlight that sign, that zodiac for the entire solar month of Taurus, you can check those videos out once I've recorded them. For this reading, we're going to be talking about advice for a cycle that goes for 6 months because of this eclipse power and period. So the cycle will start April 20th at 12:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and will last until the full moon in Aries, which is going to happen 6 months from now on September 29th. So again, this advice is big and it's relevant for an entire 6-month phase and period. Now, my intention for these readings is very different than the kind of intentions and readings that I've been doing up to this point. I'm actually very nervous and allowing myself to work through my nerves, work through my vulnerability, my insecurities, and really offer to you what I've been invited to share with you and offer for you with you. So my intention is that these readings help to give us freedom from the human condition. And I'm going to go into that more in detail in a moment here. So your reading is going to be relevant based on your Aries house. So this is the house that Aries shows up in your chart. I use the whole house system, and so you can determine your Aries house by finding your rising sign on this chart here and navigating to the reading for the house that aligns with your rising sign here. You can also, if you don't want to use the whole house system, if you're more into astrology and you know the differences in the houses, you'll look for the reading that aligns with whatever house 29 degrees, 50 minutes of Aries shows up for you in your chart. Now the deck that we're using, we're not going to be using a deck this time around. I'm not going to be drawing new cards. We're going to be reviewing the Angel Therapy cards from Doreen Virtue that came through in the Act 1 reading. And I'm going to be utilizing those cards and that advice to offer up a interpretation, a share that I have for you based on the human condition content that I'm about to share and how it's relevant based on the advice we got for the Act 1 and the house that Aries is in for you. Hi. So the human condition, what is it? Why am I talking about it? And why is it so important? I guess those last two are the same. So the human condition is essentially the state that we all live in. It's this angry, alienated, egocentric, selfish, destructive, greedy world that we see all around us, and the conflict that has with the parts of us that want to act lovingly, cooperatively, generously, unselfish towards each other. That conflict between the parts of us that act completely against a loving, cooperative nature and the parts of us that want that love and cooperativeness but feel completely unable to live that life because the world out there is angry, is destructive, is greedy, and we have to in some ways match that energy and vibration in order to survive, and we feel that's true. So that's the human condition that we live in. Well, biologist Jeremy Griffith has come up with this amazing new biological understanding of the origins of the human species that explains our human condition, and not only explains it, offers us freedom from it. This content is massive. There's an 800-page book that dives into this. I have read this entire book. You don't have to read the entire book. I'm going to try to summarize this as much as possible as I can for you, as succinctly as I can for you, so that you can grasp onto what it is that I'm sharing here. If you want more information and a better explanation of, or more in-depth explanation of this discovery, this understanding, the implications of it, I recommend watching the interview, linked in the description. And once I've had time to edit and add the links to YouTube, it'll be popping up on YouTube. Okay. The interview that solves the human condition, saves the world, that will go into a little bit more of this content. Okay, so what did he discover and why is it so important? So what Jeremy has discovered is that biologically, the origin of our human species is different than we've thought. We did evolve from animals, that competitive, selfish, angry, greedy, animalistic state. However, that evolution started 12 million years ago when we moved out of the animal's condition and we moved into a completely different state that separates us from all of the other species on this planet. What happened was our ape-like ancestors were able to raise their young and live in an environment that was completely isolated, and it was an ideal nursery conditions. There was plenty of food, and there were no predators. So essentially, for 10 million years, our species developed in an altruistic, cooperative, loving, compassionate, live for the good of the whole environment. We have this instinctual programming still in us today. It's our genes, it's our genetic adaptation. So if you're familiar a little bit with the development of matter on this planet, genes develop and will select traits over time that lead to a higher probability that the species will survive. Okay. Darwin put it out as the survival of the fittest theory. I'm avoiding that terminology because Darwin himself left the human evolution development up to future scientists to determine. He was able to figure out how animals got where they were, but he wasn't able to figure out, and he left it up to a future biologist to discover the origins of the human adaptation development that led to where we are right now. Okay, so 12 million years ago, our gene-based adaptation started to select for altruism, which means unselfishly cooperative individuals who work for the good of the whole. So for 10 million years, our species grew up knowing nothing but love, cooperation, and a relatively peaceful existence. However, genetic adaptation has a significant limitation in that it can only create adaptations over generations, which takes a long time in order to adapt to changes in the environment. That's not the most efficient adaptation tool if you want your species to be able to survive for long periods of time. So, what began to develop as a solution, as a way to quicken the adaptation process, was what's called nerve-based learning. And this is the biology that Jeremy Griffith has discovered. Well, nerve-based learning has been discovered by other sections of science, but it is where he grabbed this information for, and then he brings in the biology and the proof of how this is true for our ancestry. So nerve-based learning, we developed that to give us the ability to adapt faster. And nerve-based learning is the ability for our nerves to store memory. When we're able to store memory, we're able to compare a past event with future choices and make choices based on what we remember happening last time we made that choice. And we can adapt our choice based on that. This nerve-based learning started to develop in our Homo sapien ancestry 2 million years ago. 2 million years ago, we began to develop what I'll call the intellect. The instinct is our genetic, gene-based learning system that developed in an altruistic environment for 10 million years. And then 2 million years ago, we began to develop a nerve-based adaptation system that was able to adapt quicker to changes in the environment. However, when it first came online, it was completely ignorant. It didn't know anything. It didn't have any basis of comparison for what happened in the past. So in order for our nerve-based adaptation system to learn enough to be able to make the decisions that our species needed to make in the moment to our environment in order to survive, well, it took time, and it also took going against the programming of our gene-based heritage. I know this is a lot, and I'm going to try to keep this video as short and succinct as possible. So essentially, the human condition has been caused by a battle between intellect and instinct that happened as a result of our species working on adaptation, working on developing so that we can survive longer periods of time as we're able to make in the moment changes in response to things in our environment based on our nerve-based learning. But our nerve-based learning had to go against our instinctual programming in order to find out what worked and what didn't. What happens if I do this? What happens if I go against my instinctual program? What happens if I'm not altruistic? What happens if I'm selfish and competitive? I need to go through all of those experiences. The human species had to heroically go through all of those experiences of what if we don't act this way in order to understand why the altruism that we genetically developed was the most supportive way for us to act as a species. This is so important to free us from the human condition because we have been suffering our entire lives from this. When you were born, you expected your family, you expected genetically, you had the genetic expectation to be born into a world where everyone acts cooperatively, lovingly, and selflessly. And you did not experience that world. You didn't experience from your caregivers. You didn't experience it from the world around you. All of us have had this painful experience of this world to varying degrees. Some of us experience an extreme lack of nurturing, an extremely hostile environment that we were born into, and some of us were born into relatively decent, nurturing environments, but still, we had to face this world that wasn't acting altruistically, that wasn't acting cooperatively, that wasn't acting in a way that loves each other and that is in support of the good of the whole. So we have been dealing with the trauma of this unmet expectation of our genetic programming since childhood. And what happened was when we didn't receive that love that we came in assuming was going to be offered to us, that was just natural because that's what our genetic programming grew up in and expected. When we didn't receive that, we began to question whether or not we weren't getting that love and nurturing, that the world was messed up because there was something wrong with us, that there is something intrinsically bad about who we are as a person, and therefore we started to develop a mental illness, a neurosis, a mind illness, where we started to think, oh my gosh, maybe this is happening because of me. Maybe I'm the problem. When you didn't get unconditional love and nurturing from your caregivers from 0 to 6, which is what happened in our ancestry, 10 million years of this kind of nurturing and this kind of environment that we developed our genetic basis from. When we didn't get that coming in, our intellect said, well, I mean, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem. And so a lot of the pain in our life has been trying to hide from the fact that we feel like we're the problem, trying to get validation. I'm not the problem, right? I'm good. I'm a good person, right? I'm going to do this because it makes me feel good. And I can feel like I'm a good person for a little bit. But then there was that thing that I did that was completely selfish and aggressive. And I don't understand why I did that. And I want to hide that and just show my good face. And there's been this neurosis happening. And the psychosis of the human species is soul illness. That's what psychosis breaks down into. The soul illness is our hearts want to cooperate. We want to live in an unconditionally loving environment. That is our soul's expectation, our joy, our inheritance. And when we don't see the world giving that to us, our soul hurts. And we've been trying to numb that, to cope with that our entire life. And this coping and this validation seeking has contributed and created the human condition that we live in. And the purpose of these readings that we're going to dive into in just a moment here is to free you from this human condition with this understanding and with my support and guidance. Remember, I'm always here to guide you back to the wise, instinctive knowing that exists within you. To do that, we have to go through the intellect. The intellect has to understand what happened and why, and has to know without a doubt that it was born worthy, it has always been worthy. And when it realizes how worthy it is, the world is going to get a whole lot brighter. As always, namaste. The universal light within me salutes and honors the universal light within you. Namaste.